How's it going, everyone, and welcome to another Flesh and Blood video here on Red Zone Rogue. Today we have another Flesh and Blood deck tech, going over a hero that I was very surprised to know that I've never done a deck tech video on before. Bravo Showstopper, one of my favorite heroes, one of the original Welcome to Wraith heroes, and currently one of the best decks in the format competitively for Classic Constructed. So we're going to be doing that today. Before we get started, if you're looking to pick up any gaming supplies, go ahead and check out redzonerogue.com. It is my official merch store. I have playmats, I have sleeves. We're gonna have some apparel there eventually, so go check that out if you like my style and that kind of stuff. Check it out. We're gonna add some more stuff in the future, but there's already like 6 playmats or whatever there. So if you're looking to pick up some cards, you can go ahead and check out my affiliate link with Channel Fireball. Using that link goes and supports me, but it also supports the local game store you're buying from, because the new Channel Fireball Marketplace supports local game stores. So you can get a good deal, you can support me, and you can support a local game store. So it's kind of like a win-win if you don't have an LGS near you to support yourself. So go ahead and check that out. I greatly appreciate it. But without further ado, let's get started with the video. I'm really excited. Bravo Showstopper. All right, and here's the deck in all of its carded glory. I do want to give a quick shout out to the 2 folks who did very well with this deck in the recent Pro Quests. They are Stuart McGirt and Yaziel Diaz. I apologize if I mispronounced either one of those names, but they played the exact same Bravo deck, this deck, and after seeing it, I was just like, I have to build this deck. I like to brew my own decks, which was the case with that last Lexi deck and a lot of the Viscerai decks that I showcase here. And I saw this deck and I'm like, that's super cool. I want to build it, and so I did. So here we have Bravo Showstopper. I do want to go over almost every single card in this deck, but I'll try to make it a little bit quicker. One thing I really like about this deck is that it's actually very budget, with the exception of this Arcanite Skullcap, which you can replace with a Helm of Isen's Peak. So you can replace this Arcanite Skullcap with a Helm of Isen's Peak. It won't be quite as good at blocking as the Skullcap, obviously, but it's still pretty good. So that is something to consider if you are a budget player. There is one other legendary, the Tectonic Plating, but this one is not a super expensive one at the time of this recording. So this is something you could trade up to, or trade, a little bit, one of your valuable cards, and try to get this. And then the rest of the stuff is not too bad, with maybe the exception of this Crater Fist also going up a little bit. But other than those, it's actually a pretty budget deck, and you do have some budget options instead of using those. So Bravo Showstopper, he's a Guardian hero. What's really cool about this is that he has like no talent. He's just a Guardian hero, and I think it really shows that these heroes are not down and out. They still have what it takes to win, and that's very important, because I know a lot of people were like all doom and gloom when they saw the talent system. They're like, oh, are the old ones gonna get, retconned with talents? They don't need it. They don't need it. He's still really good. So, Bravo, 4 health, or 4 hand size, 40 health. He has an action of 2 resources until end of turn. Your next attack action card, or rather, attack action cards with cost 3 or greater gain Dominate. Go again. So that's pretty cool. It gives all of your attack action cards with 3 or greater Dominate for the whole turn, and that actually kind of comes into play, the fact that it just says your attack action cards, not your next attack action card. You can do that with this deck, which I think is really cool. So we also run Anothos. We're not running the shield, and we're not running the mini hammer. We're running Old Boy Anothos. This is a 4 attack weapon with 3 cost to attack. That's just really good, just blocking everything. So like on your opponent's turn, you can just go block, attack with Anothos. That's just a very common thing to do. And it says, if you have 2 or more cards in your pitch zone with cost 3 or greater, it gets +2. So sometimes you can pitch a card that doesn't quite pay for this. So like pitch a yellow or a red, and then pitch another card, and then get to that having 2 cards in your pitch zone, so you can attack for 2. Because in Flesh and Blood, you can't overpitch for no reason. So if you pitch a single blue card, you can't pitch another blue card, because that single blue card will already pay for this, unless you're paying for some other effect. Another common thing to do is to you can pitch a well, you'd have to have more resources, but you can like pitch a card. Let's say you pitch a blue and a yellow. You can activate your Tectonic Plating and then swing with your Anothos. So those are just some things you can do. The Arcanite Skullcap, like I said, it's the most expensive card in the deck, but it's not like it's good, but it's not like integral. It's just really good at blocking. So it has 1 defense, but if you have less life than an opposing hero, it has +1 defense and Arcane Barrier 3. It also has Battle Worn. So you can end up blocking a total of 3 damage with this. You can block block 2 and then block 1. And then it also has that Arcane Barrier 3 if you have lower health. But, I mean, at the end of the day, this is just a card that blocks, so you can still run Helm of Eisen's Peak, which blocks for 1, so you're missing out on 2 block. But, I mean, it's not going to break the deck not having this. It won't be as optimal, but you can still do it and still probably win a decent number of games. Here we have the Tectonic Plating. This one actually really, you do need this one. It's really, really good. So Tectonic Plating has Battle Worn and a defensive 2, so once again, we'll block for a total of 3. And it says, once per turn action, for a resource, create a Seismic Surge token. And a Seismic Surge token says, at the beginning of your action phase, destroy the Seismic Surge. Then the next Guardian attack action card you play this turn costs 1 less to play, which is really good. A lot of the Guardian attack actions in the deck cost 4, so getting them down to 3 and only requiring a single blue pitch card to play them is super good. So this card is great, gives you a lot of value over the course of your game, and blocks, so it's really good. Really, really good. Next is Crater Fist. It's kind of another expensive one since Crucible of War recently went out of print, but it's not as important as the Tectonic Plating. So this one also has a defensive 2, which is why it's pretty good. It has Temper, so you can block with it for 2 once, and then the second time you block with it, it gets destroyed. Or it says, action for 3 resources, destroy the Crater Fist. Your attacks with Crush gain +2 this turn, go again. Most of the time people just block with this, but you can kind of sometimes do that if you have an abundance of resources. And then we have the Mage Master Boots. So this is kind of like your typical loadout, by the way. This is your like typical loadout. So you've got like your Bravo, you got your Anothos, then you have Crater Fist, Plating, Helmet, and then you have your Mage Master Boots, which is kind of funny with Guardian because they're just like these, sparkly boots. So the Mage Master Boots, they have no defense, action for a resource, destroy the Mage Master Boots. The next non-attack action card you play this turn gains go again. So this is actually really good for playing a couple different cards in the deck, namely Fiendel, or Toma Fandel, and the Showtime, but, we'll talk about them when the time comes. And the last 2 cards are just Null Room pieces. They're just against decks that have arcane damage. That's basically it. If you're playing against Viserai, or Briar, or Kano, or any of those decks, Chain, you probably should put these in. Yep, that's what they're for. So the equipment loadout's pretty easy. You basically run these all the time. If you need the Arcane Barrier, you run these. Pretty easy setup. The deck is actually, I don't want to call it easy, but it's a straightforward deck, right? You're not doing a lot of tricky stuff. It's not a Ranger deck where you have to arsenal or prepare your turn by arsenaling and then flipping it up and then doing a bunch of shenanigans with your second arsenal and doing a bunch of stuff. This is most of the time, maybe you do set up, but it's just I set up, pitch, smack you for 11. That's kind of what it is. Speaking about smacking you for 11, we have the Crippling Crush. So I'm going to sort these by pitch value. So we have red pitch, we have yellow pitch, and then we have the good old giant chunk of blue pitch cards. Guardian is notoriously resource intensive, so we are running a giant chunk of these cards. And you know what? We're gonna zoom on in a little bit here for this, just to make it a little bit easier to see the cards. So for the red pitch cards, we are running Crippling Crush. We're running both of Bravo's specializations, which are great. This is a 7-cost card, attacks for 11, and it says if it deals 4 or more damage to a hero, that's what Crush does, by the way. If you do 4 or more damage, then you do an additional effect. They discard 2 cards. So this one is a very classic card to play with Bravo's hero ability. So you pay 9, 2 for this, and then 7 for the card to give Crippling Crush Dominate. So it's 11, Dominate, they have to discard 2 cards. Pretty classic card. It's a great one to get off of Showtime. It's a great one to have the cost reduced by the Tectonic Plating, because making cost 6 means you only have to pitch 2 cards if you don't want to do the Dominate shenanigans. So Crippling Crush, just a really good game ender. A lot of the times in this deck, by the way, this is going to look like a really aggressive deck, and it is for Bravo, but still, a lot of the times, you're just going to be like, block, 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 hammer, block, 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 hammer, and then you're like, okay, now Crippling Crush you. That's the play pattern, more or less, with this deck. but I think it's really fun. I've been able to play a couple games with this so far, and it's great. So this card is one of the really spicy new inclusions. Zealous Belting from Monarch. So this is a 2-cost generic attack action for 2, and it says, while there is a card in your pitch zone with attack greater than Zealous Belting's base attack, it gains Go again. And Zealous Belting has a base attack of 5, so anything that has 6 or more in our pitch zone gives this Go again. And this is just super sweet. You can have these really surprising go wide turns with this deck with Zealous Beltings and Lead the Charge and some other stuff. So I think this card's great. It's actually pretty funny and really scary, really scary to play against. Here we have Spinal Crush. This is a 5-cost, 9-attack card. That's a really good rate. It has Crush. If Spinal Crush deals 4 or more damage to a hero, action cards, activate abilities, and attacks they control lose and can't gain Go again during their next action phase. There's a lot of cards with Crush that are very good against specific heroes. And so maybe talk a little bit about them as we come across them, but in a lot of these cases, you're not going to cut too many of these cards. You will cut a lot of them, but for the most part, you kind of want to play a long game, even though you can deal a ton of damage. So you'll cut cards here and there, depending on your matchups. But this card, I think, is great almost no matter what. It gets rid of Go again, and almost every hero plays with Go again these days. There's a few that don't, but most do. You get your chains, any of your Rune Blades, basically. Screw over any of your Rune Blades, or your Lexis, or your Katsus, or your Boltons, or like, this card's just so good against a lot of the prevalent decks. So yes, great card. This is Mangle. We only have 1 Mangle in the deck, and that's just because it doesn't have the best on-hit effect. So Mangle is a 4-cost, 8-attack, which is all right. I definitely like the 5-9 a little more than the 4-8, but still pretty good. The 4, once again, all of the 4s are interesting because think about them as kind of 3s if you have a Seismic Surge out. So that's pretty good. It says Crush if it deals 4 or more damage. Destroy target weapon or equipment they control. Imagine a weapon, man. Imagine destroying weapons. Destroy target equipment they control with a -1 counter on it. So that's pretty good. So you can actually destroy their equipment that has, what do you call it? Battle Worn. So like, Skull Cap or their own tectonic plating. So you can have, they block with tectonic plating, and then you can like mangle them and destroy it, which is pretty brutal, actually. Pretty brutal. I like this card a lot, but you don't really need a ton of it. Next up, we have a classic. This is Pummel. It's a 2-cost +4. It's an attack reaction. It says target club or hammer weapon attack gains +4, and we definitely use a hammer, or target attack action card with 2 or greater gains +4, and if it hits, they discard a card. Playing this on a Zealous Belting with like Go again is gross, because you can do this, Zealous Belting, pummel them, they have to discard a card, and then if you have enough resources, follow that up with like a cheaper card, like a 3-pitch card or something. It's great. So yeah, we're running 3 pummels. We are also running Sigil of Solace. This is a great late game card because a lot of the times you're just like block, attack with hammer, block, attack with hammer. You can also block, play Sigil of Solace, which kind of does similar things. It gives you life where you're, if you're doing a good job preserving your life, gaining that extra 3 life is actually kind of a big deal, especially on turns where like you don't have to block as much. So Sigil is great. Also really good against arcane damage classes. We have Sink Below, another really classic card. This is a 0-cost defense reaction for blocking for 4, and then you can put a card from your hand on the bottom of your deck if you do draw a card. Running 3 of those, and then also we are running the Fate for Scenes, which is pretty close to the Sink Below. It's just a 0-cost block for 4, but it also has Opt 1, which means you can look at the top card of your deck and then put on the top or the bottom. So just really good. So those are the reds. Reds are pretty easy. They just have really good effects. Most of them are, we have a good chunk that are the defensive ones. We have the pummels, and then some pretty heavy hitting cards. Spinal Crush and Crippling Crush are definitely standouts from that. And then of course, obviously the Zealous Belting. The Zealous Belting is super cool. Next we have the yellows. So we have the Righteous Cleansing. I love this card. Not only the art, art is awesome. And this dude has like angel wings, which is crazy because all of the angels in Monarch were illusions, and this person looks like they're not an illusion. Anyway, this is a 7-cost card, which is quite a lot. It's the same as good old Crippling Crush here. So you can still do the same thing where you pay 9 and dominate your Righteous Cleansing, or you can, have your token out, your Seismic Surge, and makes it into 6. Anyway, it attacks for 10, which is pretty good. It also says if it deals 4 or more damage to a hero, look at the top 5 cards of their deck, banish 1 or more cards with the same name from among them. So you get to pick 1 card and then all the other cards with the same name. Banish them, then put the rest on top of their deck in any order. If your opponent's deck is hinging on like a couple different cards, or if it's like late game and they're like they pitched cards early to have gas for later, getting with a late Righteous Cleansing is brutal, absolutely brutal. So this is a fantastic card. We also have Buckling Blow. It's a good card that's actually you can use it in conjunction with the where is it? With the Mangle. So you can actually use Buckling Blow with Mangle because its crush effect is it puts a -1 counter on the equipment. So it's a 4 cost, 7 attack, which is great. And it puts a -1 counter on the equipment, which is great. So we're running 3 of these. We have a one of Fyendal Spring Tunic. That's just like a Freudian slip, I guess. Tome of Fyendal. You usually see a lot more of these in these Guardian decks and these Bravo decks. But this one's only running 1, which I think is interesting, and I don't think it's too bad. Instead, they're running a lot more 3-block cards and a lot more threats. So there's a lot higher threat density in this deck than in some of the other Guardian Bravo decks that I've seen. So this is a 1-cost card, draw 2 cards. If it's played from Arsenal, gain a life for each card in your hand. That's great. You play this in conjunction with those sparkly boots, the sparkly cowboy boots, and it has Go Again, which is great if you play with the cowboy boots. So you draw some cards, gain some life, and then keep going for a big turn. There's only 1 of these. There's also only 1 Remembrance. This is a 0-cost card. It's an instant. Shuffle up to 3 action cards from your graveyard into your deck. Banish Remembrance. This is another really interesting one that a lot of other decks would run many copies of. This is a card that you probably... I'm not sure if you want to include this in every matchup. If you think the matchup is going to be quick, then you just don't run this, right? You don't run this. And similarly, like for the Tome of Fyendal, if you have to swap out your boots, for like Null Rune boots, I probably would not run the Tome. Doesn't block well, pitch is okay, but if you can't give it Go Again, it's not super great. And then this one, if you don't expect the game to go long, if you're playing against a heavy aggro deck and you think you're either going to kill them or they're going to kill you, or either way, if you think it's going to not go long, this card is not going to be super useful. Then we have Lead the Charge. I like this card quite a bit. This is a 0-cost generic action. It says the next time you play an action card with a 1 cost or greater this turn, you get an action point. So this actually does work with the Tome. So you could do a combo turn where you Lead the Charge and play Tome because it's just action card, not attack action card. But it's also just really spicy for arsenaling it and then setting up a turn where you can have some really, really big, like double whammy, turns where you can attack with like, Mangle plus something else, or, especially in conjunction with Seismic Surge. So I like this. I think it's spicy. There's a lot of sweet setup. Speaking of sweet setup, we have our blue cards. This is the meat of our deck. This is where most of the stuff is going to be. A lot of these cards are going to be used for pitch or for blocking, but they also still double as threats or as value. And Showtime is no exception. Love, love, love this card. So this is a Bravo specialization. It costs 3 to play. This is another great card, by the way, to give Go Again with Lead the Charge or your boots. So this is a 3-cost card, Bravo spec, blocks for 3, blue pitch. When Showtime enters the arena, search your deck for a Guardian attack action card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. At the beginning of your action phase, destroy Showtime, then draw a card. So this is, okay, the way to use Showtime maximum is you activate your your Seismic Surge. You activate your Tectonic Plating to get a Seismic Surge. Then you play your Showtime, and then you arsenal that card that you played, draw up a hand of 4, and then you have that hand of 4 plus the card that you draw from Showtime, so a hand of 5, and you have that really powerful card in Arsenal, and it costs 1 less to play. So that is a huge setup turn where you can do stuff like Lead the Charge. You could Lead the Charge your whatchamacallits. You could Lead the Charge your big crippling crushes, or you can set up really big turns, which is awesome. So yes, Showtime is great. Next up we have another very, very awesome card. One of my favorite cards from Tales of Aria. If you watch my top 10 video, definitely there. This is a Tear Asunder. This is a 3-cost Guardian action. It says your next Guardian attack this turn gains +1 Dominate, and if it hits a hero, they discard 2 cards. So it turns basically any attack into like a mini crippling crush that also just has Dominate. This is amazing. You can use this on your weapon. You can use this on Anothos because it just says Guardian attack. So Anothos, you know, could be coming in for a casual 7 if you activated its ability with Dominate, and that ability, or 5, either way, it's really good. So Tear Asunder is an absolutely fantastic card, must have for the deck. We're also running 3 blue pummels. For the same reason we're running the red pummels, except it's just a +2, same effect. Really good for resources, but also really good for pushing damage and that on-hit effect of forcing them to discard a card. Really, really good stuff here. Okay, this card is awesome, and I love it. And I'm so glad to see it being played outside of Sonata Viscerai. This is Rouse the Ancients. This is a perfect card for this deck. This is a 3-cost card that says, as an additional cost to play Rouse the Ancients, you may reveal any number of attack action cards from your hand with 13 or more total attack. If you do, Rouse the Ancients gains +7 and go again. Okay, so this is the card that I love with Bravo's ability, giving all of your attacks with cost 3 or greater Dominate for the turn. So if you can have a turn where you can play multiple Rouse the Ancients, maybe on a turn where you're able to do Showtime, just keep in mind, Showtime doesn't let you go get Rouse the Ancients because it's a generic. Showtime only lets you get Guardian cards. But on a turn where you can, you know, Showtime and start with a 5-card hand, and then activate, I don't know why I put that there. You can activate Bravo and then go into Rouse the Ancients if you have enough high attack cards in your hand. Oh, it's so sweet. It's so sweet. Like 7 attack Dominate, 7 attack Dominate. This card's awesome, especially in conjunction with stuff like the Zealous Belting. Yeah, this deck is super sweet, and you can also just block a lot. Once again, you just block a lot, attack with your hammer, but then occasionally you could just be like, I punch you really, really hard, like many times. Yeah. All right, let's talk about some of these other attacks. So a lot of these other attacks here, like Debilitate, Crush Confidence, Crush the Weak, Choke Slam, Buckling Blow, like almost all these other cards, with the exception of these last 3, they're just going to be really, you know, solid resource cards. They all block for 3, and they all have a sweet crush effect. I think let's talk about the sweetest crush effect first. This is Cranial Crush. So it's an 8 attack for 6, which is pretty good. And it says if it deals 4 or more damage to a hero, they can't draw cards during their next action phase. So this is really good against certain heroes, obviously. This is absolutely devastating against my Lexi deck when I want to draw a lot of cards with 3 of a kind. It's really brutal against like Bolton. If Bolton wants to have a turn where he like combos off, not Saber's Bolton, but Saber's Bolton, where he wants to combo off with Lumina Ascension and draw a bunch of cards. Like, this is just sweet. This is really sweet. And also it just comes in for 8, which is also great. Debilitate is another card that I really am scared with my Lexi deck. It's a 4-cost 6 attack, which is not a good rate, but if it deals 4 or more damage to a hero, their first attack during the next turn has a -2, which is pretty good, because in my Lexi deck I want to just take a lot of damage and then just hit them back for even harder, and taking the damage off of a Debilitate is not fun. We have a Crush Confidence. This card is interesting. Sometimes it's great and sometimes it does nothing. So this is a 3-cost 5 attack, and the Crush effect is that the enemy hero loses all card effects and activated abilities. So basically their hero card is blank. Against some heroes this is literally nothing. Against some heroes it just kills them on the spot. Like if you do this against Levia and they have a bunch of cards in their blood debt, they just die, which is brutal. But against like Dash, this does literally nothing. So this is definitely a card that you could side out. So if you're playing against Dash, you just get rid of this, or maybe just keep it in if you really want to fatigue them out. It's really your call, but just know that it does nothing against some heroes. Next we have Crush the Weak. The Crush effect on this card is that they can't play attack action cards with 3 or less base attack during their action phase. This is great against like Ninja. This is great against any like tiny go wide deck. Pretty good against some chains, like against Briars. Pretty good. yeah, Crush the Weak is very solid against the small go wide decks. Next we have Chokeslam, one of my favorite cards just for the name. This is a 4-cost 6 attack. If it deals 4 or more damage to the hero, attack action cards they control can't gain attack during the next action phase. This is another card that I hate to see when I'm playing Lexi, because I really want to pump up my attacks, or if I'm playing like Azalea, or if I'm playing just anything that pumps. I guess this is also really good against Chain, if he's doing like big Riftbind turns, so Chokeslam's great. Next we have Buckling Blow. We already talked about Buckling Blow, but we're also running the blue versions. This is the one that puts a -1 counter on a piece of equipment. The blue version is still pretty good, but it's not a great rate, you know, 4 for 6. Still blocks for 3, still pitches, not too bad. I do quite like Disable Blue, because it's a 7 attack for 5, which is still pretty good, and if it deals 4 or more damage, you can screw over their arsenal, which is another card that I don't like to see as Lexi. I don't like to see this deck quite a bit as Lexi, basically. So if it deals, yeah, 4 more damage to them, they put a card from their arsenal on the bottom of its owner's deck. If you have 2 cards in your arsenal, so if you're playing against Lexi, you get to choose. If you're playing with Bravo against a Lexi and you crush them with Disable, you get to choose which card in their arsenal goes on the bottom, because it says put a card from their arsenal on the bottom of the deck. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And then we have the Cartilage Crush. 3 for 5 is actually not too bad. And it says if it deals 4 or more damage to a hero, the first action during their next turn costs an additional 1. It kind of just creates like a Frostbite token kind of situation. Pretty good for taxing, but it could really ruin their turns, but it's not going to be super crazy. And then finally, we have some big chunky defense reactions that also pitch for very well. So Staunch Response is a classic one, 2-cost 5 defense reaction, and you can pay an additional 4, and if you do, it gains +3. So if you want to pay 6 for this, so double blues, and then Staunch Response, you can block for 8, which is really good against Dominate decks and go tall decks. And then very similar, this is Unmovable. Unmovable, if it's played from Arsenal, gets +1, so 3 for 6 is pretty good. You can also have 6 for 8, so keep that in mind. These are also just, really good. Some of these defense reactions aren't great against some decks, by the way. So see, these are some other cards that you might want to consider swapping out. So if you're playing against very, very tiny go wide decks where they're just poking you a whole bunch, this is another card that you might want to consider, cutting out. So yeah, that is this Bravo Showstopper deck. I'm not sure what to call this. This deck is really cool, though. I love the Zealous Beltings. I love the Awaken the Ancients. Or Rouse the Ancients. It's so sweet. And Terra Sunder. There's a lot of cool stuff to be had with this deck. And I think it's a really fun one to pick up, especially if you are on kind of a budget. It's not going to be as expensive as decks that run both Tunic and the Skull Cap, especially because, like I said, you can kind of replace the Skull Cap. You can even kind of replace the Crater Fist, to be honest, with a Goliath Gauntlet or something like that. But you definitely need the Tectonic Plating. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below what you think of this deck. If you think it's going to be a heavy meta deck in the future, I think I'm going to see it a lot in Orlando. I'm not playing with this deck in Orlando. I'm going to be playing with something else. But this is a deck that I'm definitely practicing against, because it's a scary deck. And so one of the reasons why I built this is so I can have people I'm playing with locally play with this deck against me. So yeah, let me know what you think of this deck down below. Don't forget to do all of the normal YouTube stuff, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.